The champagne cork hit the ceiling with a hollow pop, and everyone in the restaurant applauded except me. I sat frozen in my chair, watching my fiancé Marcus drop to one knee in front of my assistant, holding the ring I'd helped him choose 3 months ago. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Vanessa, he said, his voice trembling with what seemed like genuine emotion. From the moment you walked into my life, everything changed. Will you marry me? The diamond caught the light. A flawless 3-carat cushion cut, platinum band. I'd sent him the exact specifications after we'd discussed our future together. After he'd promised me forever. Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. She looked at Marcus, then at me, then back at Marcus. For a split second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not guilt, triumph. Yes, she whispered. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The restaurant erupted in cheers. Someone started filming. Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss that lasted far too long for a public setting. I felt my stomach turn, not from heartbreak, but from the sheer audacity of what I was witnessing. When they finally broke apart, Marcus turned to me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Diana, I'm so glad you're here for this moment. Vanessa told me she'd invited you to dinner, but I had no idea she meant tonight. This is perfect. My 2 favorite women celebrating together. I forced my face into a neutral expression, the same one I'd perfected over 18 months of running Meridian Financial Group, while everyone assumed I was just another middle management employee. Congratulations, I said, my voice steady despite the rage simmering beneath my skin. This is quite a surprise. Isn't it romantic? Vanessa gushed, linking her arm through Marcus's. She was wearing the Chanel dress I'd complimented last week, the one she'd claimed was a gift from her grandmother. The price tag was still tucked into the back of her collar where she'd forgotten to remove it. $4,000. Interesting, considering her salary was $68,000 annually. Marcus pulled out a chair next to me, gesturing for Vanessa to sit. We should celebrate properly. Diana, you don't mind, do you? I know this was supposed to be a work dinner for you two, but... Not at all, I interrupted smoothly. Please, join us. The waiter appeared with more champagne. Marcus ordered the most expensive bottle on the menu without glancing at the prices. He never did. In the 14 months we'd been together, he'd developed an expensive taste for everything. Cars, watches, vacations, restaurants. He claimed his consulting business was booming, but I'd noticed he never seemed to actually consult with anyone. To new beginnings, Marcus raised his glass, looking at Vanessa with the same adoring expression he'd given me just 6 weeks ago when we'd looked at wedding venues together. I raised my glass but didn't drink. Instead, I watched them, really watched them. The way Vanessa's hand rested possessively on Marcus's thigh under the table. The way Marcus's eyes kept darting to me, checking my reaction. This wasn't spontaneous romance. This was calculated. So how long has this been going on? I asked pleasantly, as if inquiring about the weather. They exchanged glances. Marcus cleared his throat. Well, it's complicated. 3 months, Vanessa said, lifting her chin defiantly. We tried to fight it, Diana. We really did. But sometimes love just happens. 3 months. Right around the time Marcus had suggested Vanessa join Meridian as my executive assistant. He'd sold it as helping her career, giving her opportunities. I'd been hesitant. Mixing personal and professional relationships rarely ended well. But Marcus had been so persuasive. He always was. That's quite a coincidence, I said, swirling my champagne. You started working with me, and suddenly you fell in love with my fiancé. It's not like that, Marcus said quickly. Diana, you're an amazing woman, but you have to admit, we've been growing apart. You're always working, always buried in those financial reports. Vanessa understands me in a way. In a way I don't? I finished for him. Of course. I'm just a boring accountant who spends too much time with spreadsheets. That's what they all thought at Meridian. Diana Chen, the quiet CPA who'd been with the company for 4 years, working her way up from junior analyst to senior financial manager. They had no idea that working my way up had been a carefully orchestrated plan to understand every level of the company I'd inherited from my grandmother. Margaret Chen had built Meridian Financial Group from nothing, turning it into one of the most respected investment firms on the East Coast. When she died 2 years ago, she'd left everything to me, her only granddaughter, the one she'd been training since I was 16. But she'd also left me with a warning. Trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets. Know who you're dealing with before you show them your hand. So I'd hidden my hand. I'd worked under my mother's maiden name, Harrison, and kept my role as owner and CEO completely confidential. Only 3 people knew the truth: my lawyer, my accountant, and Margaret's former second-in-command, Robert Kim, who now served as the public-facing CEO while I pulled the strings from behind the scenes. It had been lonely, testing everyone around me, never knowing who genuinely cared about Diana Chen and who might be angling for a piece of the Meridian fortune. Then I'd met Marcus at a charity gala, and for the first time in years, I'd felt like someone saw me. Not my last name, not my bank account, just me. What a fool I'd been. I should go, I said, setting down my glass and reaching for my purse. Diana, wait. Marcus grabbed my wrist. I know this is a shock, but I hope we can still be friends. You're important to me, to both of us. I looked down at his hand on my wrist, then up at his face. He actually looked sincere. That was almost impressive. Of course, Marcus. I want you to be happy. Vanessa beamed. Oh, Diana, I knew you'd understand. You're always so rational about everything. That's why we make such a great team at work. Speaking of work, I said, gently extracting my wrist from Marcus's grip. I'll need you in early tomorrow, Vanessa. We have that audit review with the executive committee. Her smile faltered. Tomorrow? But Marcus and I were planning to... 8 a.m. sharp, I said firmly. It's important. Can't someone else handle it? Marcus interjected. This is a special night. Surely your boss would understand if Vanessa took a personal day. I smiled at him, the kind of smile that didn't reach my eyes. I am her boss, Marcus. And no, someone else can't handle it. For just a moment, I saw frustration flash across his face before he recovered. Right. Of course. Work comes first with you, Diana. It always has. The jab was meant to sting, to make me feel guilty for prioritizing my career over his needs. 6 months ago, it might have worked, but 6 months ago, I hadn't yet discovered what I'd discovered 3 weeks earlier. I stood, shouldering my bag. Enjoy your celebration. I'll see you tomorrow, Vanessa. As I walked toward the exit, I heard Marcus say something to Vanessa in a low voice, followed by her nervous laugh. I didn't look back. I had work to do. The elevator to my private office was hidden behind an unmarked door on the building's top floor. Most employees thought it led to a maintenance room. The ones who'd tried the door found it locked, lost interest, and never thought about it again. I scanned my fingerprint, then my retina, and the door clicked open. The elevator rose silently to the penthouse level, my real office where I'd spent countless late nights building Meridian's future, while everyone assumed I was just another ambitious manager burning the midnight oil in a cubicle downstairs. The space was exactly as I'd left it that morning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, mahogany desk, 3 monitors displaying real-time market data from around the world. On the credenza sat a photo of Grandmother Margaret at the company's 25th anniversary, her sharp eyes seeming to look right through the camera into the future. I hope I'm making you proud, I murmured, setting my bag down and powering up my main computer. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My personal phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. You deserve better. I hope you can forgive me someday." I stared at the message for a long moment before deleting it without responding. He'd sent similar messages to the 3 other women I'd discovered he'd been involved with over the past year. I'd found the text last month while his phone was charging at my apartment. He'd used the same script for all of them. Apologetic, self-deprecating, just sincere enough to make them feel special even as he discarded them. But those women had been random encounters, casual flings. Vanessa was different. Vanessa worked for me. I pulled up her employee file on my computer. Vanessa Torres, age 28, hired 4 months ago as an executive assistant. Bachelor's degree in business administration from a decent but not prestigious university. Previous employment at a small marketing firm that had gone bankrupt shortly after she left. On paper, she was exactly what she appeared to be. Young, ambitious, competent. Her references had checked out. Her interview had been impressive. She'd seemed genuinely eager to learn. But 3 weeks ago, I'd noticed something odd. A series of small transfers from one of our client investment accounts. Amounts so insignificant that they'd normally be written off as processing errors. $50 here, $100 there, never enough to trigger automated alerts. Except there were hundreds of them. I'd flag them and run a quiet investigation, tracing the pattern back over 3 months. The money was being siphoned into a network of shell accounts, then consolidated and transferred to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The access codes used for the transfers belonged to Vanessa's computer login. I'd been patient, watching, documenting, letting the evidence accumulate. Embezzlement cases required ironclad proof, and I wanted to make sure I understood the full scope before I acted. The total amount was now approaching $400,000, not enough to seriously hurt Meridian, but enough to constitute serious federal crimes. What I hadn't understood was why. Vanessa made decent money. She had no obvious debts, no signs of addiction or gambling problems. The shell accounts were sophisticated, suggesting she had help from someone who understood financial systems. Now, watching Marcus propose to her with a ring that cost more than most people's cars, I was beginning to see the bigger picture. I pulled up Marcus's social media profiles, then Vanessa's. Most of their posts were innocuous. Travel photos, restaurant meals, gym selfies. But I noticed something I'd missed before. They'd been tagging themselves at the same locations for months, just never in the same photos. The same restaurants, the same hotels, the same exclusive clubs. Digging deeper, I cross-referenced Marcus's credit card statements, the ones from the account he didn't know I had access to, the one he thought was his private account. Large cash advances, always followed within days by Vanessa's shell companies, showing deposits of similar amounts. He wasn't just sleeping with my assistant. He was her partner in stealing from me. My phone rang. Robert Kim's name appeared on the screen. "Working late again?" Robert's gravelly voice held a note of concern. At 68, he'd been Grandmother Margaret's right hand for 30 years. He was one of the few people who knew both my true identity and understood why I'd chosen to hide it. "Something came up," I said, putting him on speaker so I could continue working. "How was the board meeting?" "Productive. The expansion into Asian markets is proceeding ahead of schedule. Your grandmother would be pleased." He paused. "But that's not why you're in the office at 9 p.m. on a Friday, is it?" "Marcus proposed tonight," I said flatly. "To Vanessa, in front of me." Robert was silent for a moment. Then, "That boy has some nerve. Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. It clarifies things." "The embezzlement investigation?" "Connected. I'm almost certain Marcus has been helping her. The offshore accounts, the shell companies, they're too sophisticated for someone of Vanessa's background to set up alone. Have you considered that he might have targeted you specifically? Robert asked carefully. That your relationship wasn't an accident? The thought had crossed my mind. Marcus and I had met at a charity gala for a cancer research foundation, one that Meridian had sponsored. He'd introduced himself as an independent business consultant, charming and attentive. He'd asked about my work, seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts on market trends and economic policy. He'd never pushed for anything, never seemed interested in my money or connections. Or so I'd thought. I've been going through old records, I said, pulling up another file. Marcus attended 3 of our sponsored events before we officially met. He was always alone, always networking with our mid-level employees. Never anyone senior enough to know who I really was. He was hunting, Robert said grimly, looking for a way in. And he found one. The perfect target. A woman who appeared to be just another employee, but who had access to enough financial systems to be useful. I pulled up security footage from Meridian's offices, scrolling back through weeks of recordings. Look at this. I watched as past Diana on the screen left her desk for a meeting. 30 seconds later, Vanessa appeared, glanced around, then sat down at my computer. Her fingers flew over the keyboard for exactly 4 minutes before she closed everything and returned to her own desk. She's been cloning your access, Robert said. Using your credentials to cover her tracks. Not just that, watch what she does next. On the screen, Vanessa pulled out her phone and took several photos of documents on my desk. Confidential investment strategies for our high net worth clients. She's building an insurance policy, I realized. If the embezzlement gets discovered, she's planning to claim I was the one stealing and she was just following my orders. Those photos, combined with my access codes being used for the transfers, could create reasonable doubt, Robert finished. Particularly if she had a witness who could testify to your character. Someone close to you who might seem credible. Marcus, I said. She'd have Marcus testify that I'd been acting strangely, spending money I shouldn't have, behaving erratically. She sets me up as the fall guy, walks away clean, and they live happily ever after on my money. What do you want to do? Robert asked. I looked out at the city lights, thinking about grandmother Margaret. She'd built this company through intelligence, integrity, and an absolute refusal to let anyone take advantage of her kindness. She'd taught me that strength wasn't about aggression. It was about patience, preparation, and choosing your moment to strike. I want to give them exactly what they want, I said slowly. Let them think they've won. That's dangerous, Diana. If you wait too long, if they realize you're onto them, they won't. They think I'm just a heartbroken middle manager who's too devastated by Marcus's betrayal to think clearly. Tomorrow, Vanessa will come to that audit meeting expecting to see me fall apart. Instead, I'm going to promote her. Promote her? Robert's voice sharpened. Diana, trust me. I'm going to give her exactly enough rope to hang herself. I pulled up Meridian's organizational chart and began making notes. There's a new position opening up in our private wealth management division. It's a step up from executive assistant. More responsibility, more access, more opportunity. More opportunity to steal, Robert said. Exactly. And more opportunity to make mistakes. Right now, she's being careful, taking small amounts. But if I give her access to bigger accounts, if I make her feel secure and confident, I smiled at my reflection in the dark window. Greed makes people sloppy. And Marcus? Marcus gets to play the supportive fiancé. I'll congratulate them both, maybe even offer to help plan the wedding. I'll be so gracious, so understanding, that they'll never suspect I know anything. You're playing a dangerous game, Robert warned. These aren't just thieves anymore. If Marcus proposed to Vanessa in front of you, he's escalating. He's humiliating you publicly. That suggests either arrogance or desperation. Or both, I agreed. Which is why I need to control the narrative. Tomorrow's meeting isn't just about Vanessa. I'm going to start documenting everything. Every interaction, every transfer, every lie. When I'm ready to move, I want the case to be absolutely airtight. What about your heart? Robert asked gently. Diana, I've watched you grow up. Margaret would want me to make sure you're taking care of yourself, not just the business. I touched the photo of my grandmother, feeling the familiar ache of missing her. My heart will heal. It already is, actually. Mostly I'm angry at myself for not seeing this sooner. You saw what you wanted to see. There's no shame in that. Grandmother Margaret would never have been so naive. Your grandmother was brilliant, but she was also alone for most of her life because she trusted no one. Robert's voice softened. She didn't want that for you. She wanted you to have what she never did. Love, partnership, someone to share the burden of leadership. That's why she encouraged you to hide your identity, to find someone who'd love Diana Chen, not the Meridian heiress. Well, that experiment failed spectacularly, I said with a bitter laugh. One failed experiment doesn't invalidate the whole hypothesis. There are good people in the world, Diana. You've just been unlucky enough to find two bad ones. We talked for a few more minutes about the logistics of Monday's board meeting, then said goodnight. After hanging up, I sat in the darkness of my office, watching the city's lights shimmer below. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Marcus. Are you okay? I'm worried about you. Call me when you get home. I almost laughed. The sheer audacity of his concern. The performance of care from someone who'd been systematically deceiving me for over a year. Did he lie awake at night rehearsing his lines? Or did the lies come so naturally now that he believed them himself? Instead of responding, I opened a new document on my computer and began creating what I privately called the file. A comprehensive record of everything I knew, everything I suspected, and everything I planned to prove. At the top, I wrote, Day 1. Marcus proposes to Vanessa using the ring I helped select. They believe I'm devastated. In reality, I'm just getting started. Saturday morning, I woke early and went for a run along the waterfront. The physical exertion helped clear my head, let me think through the days ahead without the anger clouding my judgment. Marcus had texted again overnight. I know you're hurt, but please don't shut me out. We need to talk. I responded this time. I need some space to process everything. Let's talk next week. His reply came instantly. Of course, take all the time you need. Just know that I care about you, Diana. That hasn't changed. I put the phone away and focused on my run. The morning was crisp and clear, joggers and dog walkers sharing the path. A young couple sat on a bench overlooking the water, the woman's head on the man's shoulder, both looking perfectly content in the simple moment. That's what I'd thought I'd found with Marcus. Simple happiness. Companionship without complications. Someone who'd choose me for me, not for what I could give them. Back at my apartment, I showered and made coffee, then settled in front of my laptop to continue research. I'd created a private server to store all my evidence, encrypted and backed up to multiple secure locations. Everything I found went into the file, organized by date and category. Marcus Dalton, age 35. Bachelor's degree in business from a mid-tier state school. Previously employed by Henderson Consulting Group, left after 18 months under circumstances he'd always been vague about. I'd never pushed for details. Everyone had setbacks in their careers. Now I wondered what those circumstances were. I pulled up Henderson's corporate directory and found the name of Marcus's former supervisor, then cross-referenced it with LinkedIn. David Henderson, now retired, living in Florida. His profile listed a personal email address. I drafted a careful message. Mr. Henderson, I apologize for contacting you out of the blue. My name is Diana Chen, and I'm considering entering into a business partnership with Marcus Dalton. He mentioned working for Henderson Consulting several years ago, and I'm conducting due diligence on all potential partners. Would you be willing to discuss his time with your company? I'd be happy to compensate you for your time. Best regards, Diana Chen. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. It was Saturday. He probably wouldn't respond until Monday at the earliest. But I'd learned that patience was essential to good intelligence gathering. My phone rang. Vanessa's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering, pitching my voice to sound slightly raw, as if I'd been crying. Hello? Diana? Oh my God, I'm so sorry to bother you. I wanted to check if you were okay. I'm fine, I said, adding a small sniff for effect. It was just a surprise, that's all. I know, and I feel terrible about how it happened. Marcus wanted to wait, to tell you privately first, but the ring had just come in and he was so excited and… She was babbling, nervous. Good. Vanessa, it's okay. Really. These things happen. I paused as if gathering courage. Actually, I'm glad you called. I've been thinking about what you said last night, about love just happening sometimes. You're right. And I want you both to be happy. Oh, Diana. Her voice flooded with relief. You don't know how much that means to me. To us. I was so worried that this would ruin our working relationship. Of course not. You're excellent at your job. I wouldn't want to lose you over personal matters. I took a breath, delivering the next line carefully. In fact, I was planning to discuss something with you at Monday's meeting. There's a position opening up in private wealth management, assistant director level. I think you'd be perfect for it. Silence on the other end. Then, are you serious? Completely. You've proven yourself capable, and frankly, it might be easier for both of us if you weren't my direct assistant anymore. Less awkward. Diana, I don't know what to say. That's incredibly generous of you. Just promise me you'll consider it seriously. The role comes with significant responsibility, but also significant opportunities. I let a trace of vulnerability enter my voice. And maybe, if you're interested, we could have coffee sometime? Not as boss and employee, but as… I don't know. I'd like to think we could still be friends. I'd like that, Vanessa said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I really would. And yes, absolutely, I'm interested in the position. More than interested. Good. We'll discuss the details Monday. 8 a.m. sharp? I'll be there. And Diana, thank you for being so understanding. A lot of people wouldn't be. After we hung up, I sat back and reviewed the call in my mind. Her surprise had been genuine, her relief palpable. She'd expected me to rage, to fire her, to make things difficult. Instead, I'd given her exactly what she wanted: validation, advancement, and the illusion that she'd gotten away with it. Now she'd get comfortable. Now she'd get greedy. My email dinged. A response from David Henderson, surprisingly quick. Ms. Chen, I'd be happy to discuss Marcus Dalton with you, though I should warn you up front that my assessment may not be what you want to hear. I'm available for a phone call anytime this weekend. Here's my number. Regards, David Henderson. I called immediately. Ms. Chen? David Henderson's voice was rough, aged by years and probably too many cigars. That was fast. I appreciate you getting back to me so quickly, Mr. Henderson. I know this is an unusual request. Not as unusual as you might think. You're the 4th person to ask me about Marcus Dalton in the past 5 years. My grip tightened on the phone. Really? Really. And I'll tell you what I told the others. Marcus Dalton is charming, intelligent, and an absolutely shameless liar. Henderson sighed. I should have fired him within the first 6 months. Instead, I gave him chance after chance because he was good at bringing in clients. Turns out he was good at it because he was sleeping with half of them. That's not exactly a firing offense, I said carefully. No, but embezzling from their accounts is. Henderson's voice hardened. We caught him red-handed, moving money from a client's investment account into his personal accounts through a series of shell companies. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. He claimed he was just borrowing it, that he'd planned to pay it back, but we both know that's nonsense. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice level. What happened? The client was my late wife's sister, family. She didn't want the publicity of a trial, and honestly, neither did I. So we made a deal. Marcus paid back what he'd stolen, signed an NDA, and disappeared. I thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. About a year later, I got a call from a woman in Chicago. She'd gotten engaged to Marcus, then found out he'd been systematically stealing from her business. By the time she realized what was happening, he'd taken over $300,000 and disappeared. Did she press charges? She tried. But Marcus had been careful. He'd used her own access codes, made it look like she was the one stealing. It turned into a he said she said situation. And without hard evidence, the prosecutor declined to pursue it. Henderson paused. The other two calls were similar stories. Different cities, different women, same pattern. He finds someone with money or access to money, makes them fall in love with him, then bleeds them dry while setting them up to take the fall. I felt cold despite the warm morning sun streaming through my windows. Why didn't anyone warn people? Post something online? Alert authorities? The NDAs, mostly, and shame. These were all successful, intelligent women who got played by a con man. That's not something most people want to advertise. His voice softened. Ms. Chen, whatever business you're considering with Marcus Dalton, my advice is simple. Run. Run fast and run far. The man is a predator, and he's very, very good at what he does. Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Henderson. This has been extremely helpful. I hope so. And Ms. Chen, if you do decide to pursue charges against him, call me. I'd be happy to testify about his history. Maybe it's time someone stopped him permanently. After we hung up, I sat perfectly still, processing everything I'd learned. This wasn't just about stealing money. This was Marcus's entire life, his actual profession. He was a professional con artist, moving from target to target, city to city, always staying one step ahead of consequences. And Vanessa? Was she another victim he'd recruited, or was she a willing partner? I needed to know. Monday morning, I arrived at the office at 7 a.m., an hour before my meeting with Vanessa. The building was nearly empty, just a few early arrivals and the night cleaning crew finishing up. I took the elevator to my hidden office and pulled up the weekend's security footage. Saturday evening, 8:47 p.m. Vanessa had come into the office. She'd used her keycard to access the executive floor, gone straight to my desk, my public desk downstairs, and spent 40 minutes on my computer. The camera angle didn't capture the screen, but her body language suggested focused work, not casual browsing. Sunday morning, 6:23 a.m. Marcus had arrived. He'd met Vanessa in the parking garage, and they'd stood by his car talking for 17 minutes. At one point, Marcus had handed her something, an envelope or folder, too quick for the camera to capture clearly. They were coordinating, planning, and they thought they were being careful, meeting early when no one would see them. Except I was always watching. At 7:50 a.m., I took the elevator down to my public office, a modest space on the third floor that most senior managers occupied. I'd barely settled behind the desk when Vanessa knocked on the door. Right on time, I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. Please, sit. Vanessa looked nervous but excited, wearing a navy power suit that was definitely new. More expensive purchases on a salary that shouldn't support them. Thank you for this opportunity, Diana. I've been reviewing the private wealth management division, and I have so many ideas. I'm sure you do. I interrupted gently. But before we discuss the new position, I need to address something else. I pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. These are the audit reports from the past 3 months. I need your help understanding some irregularities. Her face went carefully blank. Irregularities? Small discrepancies in some of our client accounts. Nothing major. Probably just processing errors, but the auditors flagged them for review. I opened the folder, showing her printed spreadsheets covered in my handwritten notes. See these transfers here? They don't match our normal procedures. I was hoping you could help me trace them back to their source. I watched her carefully. A guilty person would panic, deflect, make excuses. An innocent person would lean forward and examine the documents, trying to help solve the problem. Vanessa did neither. Instead, she sat back slightly, her eyes scanning the papers without really looking at them. I'm not sure how much help I'd be. These are outside my normal responsibilities. But you have access to the same systems I do. I pressed gently. And you're bright. I thought you might see something I'm missing. Maybe I could look at them later? She glanced at her watch. I actually have a lunch meeting with Marcus, and I wanted to leave early to... Of course, I said smoothly, closing the folder. We can address it another time. Let's talk about the new position instead. Her relief was visible. Yes, please. I'm so excited about the possibilities. For the next 30 minutes, I outlined the role of Assistant Director of Private Wealth Management. It was a real position, one I'd actually created specifically for this purpose. The person in this role would have access to high net worth client accounts, would coordinate with our investment managers, would be trusted with confidential information. It was also a position that came with extensive oversight, automatic audit trails, and scrutiny from both internal and external compliance officers. The salary is $95,000, plus performance bonuses, I said, watching Vanessa's eyes light up. You'd have your own office, a small team under you, and direct interaction with our most important clients. That sounds incredible, she breathed. When would I start? 2 weeks. That gives you time to transition your current responsibilities and get up to speed on the new accounts. I pulled out another folder, this one containing the official offer letter. I'll need you to sign some additional confidentiality agreements, standard procedure for this level of access. She barely glanced at the documents before signing. Another mistake. A smart person would have read carefully, maybe even had a lawyer review them. But Vanessa was too excited, too confident that she'd gotten away with it. The confidentiality agreements she'd just signed included language about fiduciary responsibility, criminal, penalties for fraud, an explicit acknowledgement that any misuse of client funds would be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Congratulations, I said, standing to shake her hand. I think this is going to be a great opportunity for both of us. Thank you, Diana. Seriously, thank you. I know this must be hard for you, with everything that's happened with Marcus, but I really appreciate your professionalism. Marcus and I are adults, I said with a sad smile. We'll figure things out. In the meantime, I'm happy to see you advancing your career. You've earned it. After she left, I sat back down and made notes in the file. Vanessa had taken the bait perfectly. Now I just needed to set the trap. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Vanessa told me about the promotion. That's really big of you, Diana. Maybe we could all have dinner this week? Clear the air? I stared at the message for a long moment. The audacity was breathtaking. He wanted to have dinner. The 3 of us. He wanted to watch me sit across from them and pretend everything was fine while they planned their future on my stolen money. Sure, I replied. That sounds nice. Thursday? Perfect. I'll make reservations somewhere special. 7 p.m.? See you then. I set the phone down and pulled up the security footage again, rewinding to watch Vanessa at my desk. I'd installed keystroke logging software on that computer months ago, a precaution I took with all sensitive workstations. Now I accessed the logs from Saturday night. Vanessa had logged into the system using my credentials. Credentials she'd captured through a keylogger she'd installed on the computer 6 weeks ago. She'd accessed 3 high-value client accounts, reviewed their investment portfolios, and copied files to a USB drive. She hadn't stolen money this time. She'd stolen information. I cross-referenced the accounts she'd accessed with my client list. All 3 were ultra-high net worth individuals, people with portfolios worth tens of millions. The kind of clients whose account numbers, investment strategies, and personal information would be valuable to competitors, or to someone planning a major theft. My desk phone rang. Robert Kim's extension. "The board wants to move up next month's meeting," he said without preamble. "We have an offer to acquire Peterson Financial Group, but we need to move quickly. Can you clear your schedule for Thursday afternoon?" Thursday, the same night as my dinner with Marcus and Vanessa. "What time?" 3 p.m. Should run about 2 hours. "I'll be there." I made a note in my calendar, an idea forming. "Robert, that acquisition, how many people know about it?" "Just the board and senior executive team. Why?" "Keep it that way for now. I'll explain at the meeting." After hanging up, I pulled up Peterson Financial Group's file. They were a smaller firm, specialized in managing trusts and estates for wealthy families. The acquisition would give Meridian access to a whole new client base and establish us more firmly in the estate planning sector. It was also the kind of confidential information that Vanessa, in her new role, would have access to. The kind of information that someone could sell to a competitor for a substantial sum. I opened the file and added a new entry. Test number 1. Peterson Financial Acquisition. Confidential memo to be placed in Vanessa's new office files on her first day. Monitor for leaks. If Vanessa was just an embezzler, she'd focus on moving money. But if she was something more, a corporate spy perhaps, or someone working with Marcus to set up a bigger score, she'd go after the strategic information too. Either way, I'd know soon enough. Thursday arrived with unseasonably warm weather, the kind of perfect evening that made outdoor dining a pleasure. Marcus had chosen Le Bernardin, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. I'd been there once with grandmother Margaret years ago for her birthday. I arrived exactly on time, wearing a simple black dress that Marcus had once said made me look elegant. I'd even put on the pearl necklace he'd given me for my birthday last year, purchased, I now knew, with money he'd stolen from someone else. Marcus and Vanessa were already seated at a corner table, champagne glasses in hand. Marcus stood as I approached, pulling out my chair with exaggerated courtesy. "Diana, you look beautiful," he said, kissing my cheek. "Doesn't she look beautiful, Vanessa?" "Absolutely stunning," Vanessa agreed, but her eyes were assessing, calculating. She was wearing the engagement ring, of course, turning her hand slightly to catch the light. I smiled at them both and sat down. "This is lovely. I appreciate you including me." "We're all adults here," Marcus said, echoing my words from earlier in the week. "Just because things didn't work out between us doesn't mean we can't be civilized." The waiter appeared with menus and another glass of champagne for me. I accepted it but didn't drink, focusing instead on the menu's descriptions of fish I had no intention of eating. "So," Marcus said after we'd ordered, "Vanessa tells me you had your board meeting today. How did it go?" I glanced at Vanessa, surprised. "I didn't realize I'd mentioned it." "Oh, I saw it on your calendar," she said quickly, "when I was organizing your schedule for next week." She was lying. My public calendar never showed board meetings, but she'd have seen it if she'd been accessing my private schedule, which meant she'd escalated her surveillance. "It went well," I said carefully. "Just routine business, quarterly reviews, that sort of thing." "Nothing exciting?" Marcus pressed. No big deals or acquisitions? There it was. He was fishing for information, probably at Vanessa's prompting. They'd identified the Peterson acquisition somehow and wanted to know if it was moving forward. "Oh, you know how these things are," I said with a dismissive wave. "Lots of discussion, not much action. The board is very conservative about expansion." I saw Marcus and Vanessa exchange glances. Disappointment? Frustration? They'd expected me to mention the acquisition, to give them something they could use. "Well, that's probably wise," Marcus said, recovering smoothly. "No point taking unnecessary risks in this market." The appetizers arrived, giving us a temporary reprieve from conversation. I watched them interact. The casual touches, the private smiles, the way they seemed to communicate without words. They were comfortable together, practiced. This wasn't a new relationship. They'd been together far longer than 3 months. "Diana?" Vanessa said suddenly. "I want to apologize again for how everything happened. I never meant to hurt you." "I know," I said, meaning it. She probably hadn't meant to hurt me personally. I was just a means to an end, a stepping stone to whatever she and Marcus were really after. "It's just that sometimes you meet someone and everything changes," she continued, reaching for Marcus's hand. "You must have felt that way when you met Marcus." Actually, I'd felt cautious and hopeful, not swept away. But I nodded anyway. He certainly made an impression. "Speaking of impressions," Marcus said, "I've been thinking about my consulting business. Expanding into financial services consulting. Maybe Meridian would be interested in contracting some work." I almost laughed. He was actually trying to position himself as a vendor, to get official access to the company. The audacity was impressive. "That's an interesting idea," I said neutrally. "You'd have to go through the official procurement process, of course. We're pretty strict about vendor relationships." Of course. I wouldn't want any special treatment just because I know you." He smiled, all charm. "I just think there could be synergies, you know? Vanessa's on the inside. I could provide external perspective and strategic guidance." "Let me think about it," I interrupted. "It's not really my decision anyway. Those choices get made at levels above me." Another lie, but a necessary one. I wanted to see how he'd react to the implication that I had no real authority. Marcus's smile tightened slightly. "Right, of course. Just a thought." We made it through dinner with increasingly strained small talk. Marcus kept trying to steer conversations toward Meridian's business, while I deflected and redirected. Vanessa grew quieter as the evening progressed, drinking more champagne and watching me with growing suspicion. They'd expected the heartbroken ex-fiancé. Instead, they were getting someone who seemed perfectly fine, maybe even a bit bored by the whole situation. "I should get going," I said as dessert arrived. "Early meeting tomorrow." "Already?" Marcus looked disappointed. "We barely got to catch up." "I think we've caught up plenty," I said, pulling out my wallet. "Don't be ridiculous," Marcus said. "Dinner's on me." "Actually, I insist." I placed enough cash on the table to cover my portion plus a generous tip. "But thank you for the invitation. It was illuminating." I stood, gathering my purse. Vanessa was staring at me now, her earlier friendliness replaced with something harder to read. "Diana," she said as I turned to leave, "is everything okay? You seem different." I smiled at her, the kind of smile Grandmother Margaret used to give to competitors who'd underestimated her. "Everything's perfect, Vanessa. I'm just finally seeing things clearly. See you at the office Monday. We have a lot to discuss." I walked out of the restaurant without looking back, knowing they'd sit there wondering what I meant, what I knew, what I was planning. Good. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Because in 3 days, Vanessa would start her new position with access to accounts she'd been dreaming about. And from that moment forward, every single action she took would be monitored, recorded, and documented. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for them to walk into it. Vanessa's first day in her new position began at exactly 8 a.m. I watched from my hidden office as she arrived on the executive floor, admiring her new nameplate, running her fingers across the mahogany desk that was now hers. She looked like she'd won the lottery. In a way, she thought she had. "Good morning, Vanessa," I said, appearing in her doorway with a coffee and a warm smile. "Welcome to Private Wealth Management." She jumped slightly, then laughed. "Diana, you scared me. Thank you, this is all so surreal." "You'll do great." I set a thick folder on her desk. "These are your first client files. The Harrison Family Trust, the Westbrook Portfolio, and the Chen Estate Holdings." Her eyes widened at the last name. "Chen? Any relation to you?" "Distant," I said smoothly. "My grandmother's estate, now mine, funneled through enough legal entities to obscure the connection. They're very private, very particular, but the account is worth 42 million, so we keep them happy." I watched her pupils dilate slightly at the number. $42 million, now within her reach. "I'll take excellent care of them," she promised. "I know you will." I pulled out a tablet and stylus. "Before you dive in, I need your signature on a few more documents. Standard compliance protocols for this level of access." She signed without reading again. Authorization for comprehensive audit trails, acknowledgement that all communications would be monitored, consent for background checks and financial reviews. Each signature was another nail in her coffin, though she didn't know it yet. "Perfect," I said, collecting the tablet. "Oh, and one more thing. We have a new security protocol for high-value accounts. Any transfer over $50,000 requires dual authentication. Your code plus mine. Just a precaution." I saw the flicker of annoyance cross her face before she masked it. "Of course. Makes sense." It did make sense. It also meant she couldn't make any major moves without involving me directly, which would force her to be creative. And creative criminals made mistakes. 3 days passed. I monitored every keystroke, every login, every file she accessed. Vanessa was being cautious, familiarizing herself with the systems, building trust with the clients. She was good at her job, I had to admit. Charming on calls, detail-oriented in her reports, professional in every interaction. She was also methodically photographing sensitive documents when she thought no one was watching. On Thursday morning, Robert called my private line. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Someone leaked the Peterson acquisition to our competitor. Morrison Financial made a counteroffer this morning, 20% higher than ours. They knew exact numbers, timing, everything." I felt cold satisfaction settle in my chest. "When did you distribute the acquisition memo?" "Monday morning. Only went to senior management and..." He stopped. Vanessa, I confirmed. I placed a modified version in her files with slightly different numbers. If Morrison's offer matches those numbers exactly, we'll know the source. And if it does? Then we have her for corporate espionage in addition to embezzlement. Federal charges, Robert. Real prison time. He was quiet for a moment. "You've been planning this?" "Every step." "How much does Morrison's offer differ from the real numbers?" "Checking now." I heard keys clicking. "Their offer is based on a valuation that's $3 million higher than the actual assessment. That's the exact number in Vanessa's modified memo." I finished. "She sold them false information, which means their offer is invalid and they'll look like fools when the real numbers come out." Robert chuckled darkly. "Your grandmother would be proud. What's your next move?" "Let Vanessa think she got away with it. In the meantime, I need you to set up a meeting with our attorneys and the FBI. It's time to bring in the professionals. The FBI? Wire fraud, identity theft, corporate espionage. This crossed state lines months ago when she set up those offshore accounts. The federal prosecutors will want this case, especially with Marcus's history. Speaking of Marcus, we've been monitoring his activities as you requested. He's been quite busy. Tell me. He's made contact with 3 of our major clients, claiming to represent a new investment firm. He's using information that could only have come from our internal systems to pitch them on switching their portfolios to his management. I closed my eyes, feeling the full scope of their plan crystallize. They weren't just stealing money. They were trying to steal my clients, my reputation, my entire business. Marcus would position himself as the brilliant consultant who could offer better returns. Vanessa would facilitate the transitions using her access, and I would be left looking incompetent, or, worse, complicit. Document everything, I said. Every call, every email, every meeting. I want a timeline of their entire operation. Already done. Diana, are you sure you want to wait? We have enough evidence right now to... Not yet. I want them to commit fully. I want them to make the big move, the one they can't talk their way out of. I pulled up my calendar. Tomorrow is Friday. Vanessa has access to the Chen estate account. That's the prize they've been working toward. That's your inheritance. Exactly. And if they try to touch it, we'll have them dead to rights. Attempted grand larceny, plus everything else. I made notes in the file. Set the meeting with the FBI for Monday morning. By then, this will be over. Friday morning, I arrived at the office early and went straight to my hidden command center. I pulled up the security feeds, the keystroke logs, the audit trails. Everything was ready. At 9:15 a.m., Vanessa logged into her computer and accessed the Chen estate account. She spent 40 minutes reviewing the holdings, stocks, bonds, real estate investments, a diversified portfolio worth $42 million. At 10:03 a.m., she picked up her phone and sent a text. The message went to Marcus. Looking at the big one. Numbers are better than we thought. Ready when you are. His response came immediately. Tonight. My place. Bring everything. I screenshot the exchange and added it to the file. At 11:30 a.m., Vanessa came to my office. She was nervous, fidgeting with her pen. Diana, do you have a minute? Of course. Come in. She sat down, crossing and uncrossing her legs. I've been reviewing the Chen estate account, and I think we might want to consider restructuring some of their holdings. The current allocation seems overly conservative for the market conditions. This was it. She was testing me, seeing if I'd approve changes that would give her and Marcus access to move money. That's an interesting observation, I said neutrally. What did you have in mind? She pulled out a proposal she'd clearly spent hours preparing. New investment vehicles, different fund managers, a complete restructuring that would require liquidating current positions and reinvesting elsewhere. The type of major movement that would create chaos in audit trails and opportunities for money to disappear. This is very thorough, I said, flipping through the pages. But the Chen estate is extremely conservative about changes. They'd need to approve any restructuring personally. Of course. I thought maybe you could reach out to them, since you have that distant family connection. Her smile was practiced, but I could see the calculation behind it. I can ask, I said slowly. But they're notoriously difficult to reach. It might take weeks to get approval. Disappointment flashed across her face. Oh, that's unfortunate. I really think this could benefit them significantly. Tell you what, let me review this over the weekend and we'll discuss it Monday. Maybe there's a way to expedite the approval process. I set the proposal aside. Actually, I'm glad you stopped by. I wanted to invite you and Marcus to dinner tomorrow night. My treat this time. She looked surprised. Tomorrow night? I know it's short notice, but I've been doing a lot of thinking. About everything. And I'd like to talk to you both about something important. I smiled mysteriously. Call it closure. Oh. Sure. I'll check with Marcus, but I think we're free. Perfect. I'll text you the address. 7 o'clock? After she left, I pulled out my phone and sent a message to Robert. They're making their move tonight. I'm accelerating the timeline. Tomorrow night, we end this. His response was immediate. Are you sure you're ready? More than ready. It's time. Saturday evening arrived cold and clear. I'd chosen my grandmother's estate for the dinner. A sprawling property an hour outside the city that I rarely used but maintained impeccably. The house held memories of childhood summers, of learning about business at Margaret's knee, of becoming the woman she'd trained me to be. Tonight felt appropriate. I'd hired a catering service for the evening, asked them to prepare Margaret's favorite menu. Rack of lamb, roasted vegetables, a wine that cost more than most people's monthly rent. If this was going to be my last meal with Marcus and Vanessa, it would be memorable. They arrived at exactly 7, Marcus driving a new Tesla that definitely wasn't in his price range. Vanessa wore designer everything, clothes, shoes, jewelry, all purchased in the past 2 weeks. Diana, this place is incredible, Vanessa breathed as I led them inside. I had no idea you had access to a property like this. Family estate, I said vaguely. We keep it for special occasions. We settled in the dining room, beneath the crystal chandelier that had hung there since my grandmother's time. The catering staff served the first course, then discreetly withdrew, leaving us alone. So, Marcus said, raising his wine glass. You said you wanted to talk about something important? I did. I set down my fork and looked at them both. I want to thank you. They exchanged confused glances. Thank me? Vanessa asked carefully. For showing me who you really are. Both of you. I pulled out my phone and set it on the table. You know, when I started this company 12 years ago, my grandmother told me something I never forgot. She said the hardest part about success isn't building something. It's protecting it from people who want to take it from you. Marcus's expression shifted slightly. Diana, what are you talking about? I'm talking about Meridian Financial Group, my company. The one I own, the one I built, the one you've been stealing from. The silence was absolute. Vanessa recovered first. Your company? Diana? You're a financial manager? No. I cut her off sharply. I'm the founder and CEO. Margaret Chen was my grandmother. She left me everything when she died, including Meridian. I've been running it, from behind the scenes for 2 years while I figured out who I could trust. I watched the color drain from Marcus's face. That's not possible. Oh, it's very possible. In fact, it's meticulously documented. I swiped through my phone and pulled up a photo. Vanessa at my desk, fingers on the keyboard, USB drive visible. Like this photo from 3 weeks ago, when you accessed the Chen estate account using stolen credentials. Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth. Or this one. Another photo, Marcus and Vanessa in the parking garage, exchanging an envelope. That's the shell company information, isn't it? The accounts you've been using to launder the money you've stolen? Diana, I can explain. Marcus started. Can you explain $467,000 in fraudulent transfers? Because that's the current total. I pulled out a tablet and slid it across the table. Here's the complete audit trail. Every transaction, every access code, every keystroke. All documented, all backed up, all ready for the federal prosecutors who'll be reviewing it Monday morning. Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair scraping across the floor. You're bluffing. You can't prove. I can prove everything. I stood as well, facing him across the table. I can prove you're a con artist with a history of targeting successful women. I spoke with David Henderson, by the way. He sends his regards. And Sarah Chen from Chicago. and Rebecca Morrison from Boston. They're all very interested in testifying about your pattern of behavior." His face had gone from pale to red. "You had no right." "I had every right. This is my company you've been stealing from. My money you've been embezzling. My clients you've been trying to poach." I turned to Vanessa. "And you? I gave you opportunities, promoted you, trusted you, and you repaid me by stealing confidential information and selling it to our competitors." "The Peterson acquisition," she whispered. "The Peterson acquisition. Unfortunately for you, the information you sold was fake. Morrison Financial made an offer based on inflated numbers that don't exist. They're threatening to sue us for fraud, except we have proof that you leaked the information. So now they're suing you instead." Vanessa was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "Diana, please. I'm sorry. We'll pay it back. All of it. Just don't what? Press charges? Report you to the authorities?" I walked to the window, looking out at the grounds my grandmother had loved. "You know what the worst part is? I actually liked you, Vanessa. I thought you had potential. I was going to mentor you, help you build a real career." "You still can," she said desperately. "I made a mistake. We made a mistake. But we can fix this." I turned back to face them. "No, you can't. Because this wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated plan to destroy me and steal everything I've built. And I'm not going to let that happen." Marcus moved toward the door. "We're leaving." "No, you're not." I pressed a button on my phone. The dining room doors opened and 2 people entered, Robert Kim and a woman in a dark suit. "Marcus Dalton and Vanessa Torres," the woman said, holding up a badge. "I'm Special Agent Jennifer Walsh, FBI. You're both under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, corporate espionage, and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent." I watched as the agents handcuffed them both. Vanessa was sobbing uncontrollably. Marcus was staring at me with pure hatred. "How long?" he spat. "How long have you known?" "About the embezzlement? 3 weeks. About you?" I smiled coldly. "I've been investigating you since our second date. I learned a long time ago that people who seem too good to be true usually are." "Then why?" Vanessa cried. "Why string us along? Why not just turn us in immediately?" "Because I wanted you to commit fully. I wanted evidence that would guarantee conviction, not just suspicion. And I wanted you to feel exactly what I felt. Betrayed, humiliated, fooled." I walked closer to her. "You made me watch him propose to you with my ring. Now you get to watch your entire life fall apart." Agent Walsh began leading them toward the door. Marcus tried one last time. "Diana, please. Think about what you're doing. We can work something out. I'll testify against Vanessa. Tell you everything." "There's nothing to work out," I said flatly. "The federal prosecutor has everything they need. You're both looking at 10 to 15 years minimum, and that's before the civil suits from Morrison Financial and the other victims of your scams." "Diana!" Vanessa screamed as they reached the door. "Please, I'll do anything. I'm sorry." I watched them go, their voices fading as they were led to the waiting vehicles outside. When the doors closed behind them, I felt something release in my chest. Not quite relief, but closure. Robert approached quietly. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." I sat down at the table, looking at the untouched dinner. "Better than fine, actually." "Your grandmother would have handled it exactly the same way," he said with a slight smile. "Patient, thorough, and absolutely merciless when it counted. I learned from the best." I raised my wine glass in a silent toast to Margaret's memory. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media attention, and internal restructuring at Meridian. I finally revealed my true identity to the full staff, which caused quite a stir, but also earned respect once people understood why I'd chosen to work anonymously. Marcus and Vanessa both tried to plead out, but the evidence was too overwhelming. The federal prosecutor was building cases that would ensure lengthy prison sentences. David Henderson and two of Marcus's other victims came forward to testify, establishing a pattern of behavior that made any defense nearly impossible. Morrison Financial dropped their lawsuit once they realized they'd been manipulated and actually approached us about a possible partnership. The Peterson acquisition went through at our original terms. 6 weeks after the arrests, I stood in my grandmother's estate again, this time alone. The house was quiet, peaceful. I walked through the rooms, remembering Sunday dinners and business lessons, the way Margaret had prepared me for exactly the kind of betrayal I'd just survived. My phone rang. An unknown number. Hello? Ms. Chen, this is David Henderson. I heard about what happened. I wanted to say congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Your testimony was crucial to the prosecution. I'm glad I could help, but I'm calling for another reason. He paused. After you exposed Marcus, 2 more women came forward with similar stories. You stopping him potentially saved dozens of other victims. I felt emotion tighten my throat. I'm glad something good came from this. More than something good. You did what none of us had the courage to do. You fought back properly, and you won. His voice warmed. Your grandmother would be very proud. After we hung up, I walked out to the terrace overlooking the gardens. Spring was coming, the trees beginning to bud, everything preparing for renewal. I thought about trust, about love, about the risks we take when we open ourselves to other people. Marcus and Vanessa had tried to make me cynical, to make me believe that everyone had an angle, everyone was out for themselves. But they'd failed at that too. Because I'd learned something important through this entire ordeal. There were good people in the world. Robert, who'd stood by me through everything. David Henderson, who'd traveled across the country to testify. The FBI agents who'd taken my case seriously. The employees at Meridian who, once they knew the truth, had rallied around their CEO with loyalty and dedication. Bad people existed, but they didn't get to define my story. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert. Board meeting next week. They want to discuss your leadership. I think you're about to get some very public recognition. I smiled, typing back, let's keep things quiet a little longer. I'm not quite ready to give up my secret identity. His response was immediate. Your grandmother really did train you well. I looked out at the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in the city, Marcus and Vanessa were sitting in jail cells, their carefully constructed lives falling apart around them. They'd tried to take everything from me, my company, my money, my dignity. Instead, they'd given me something unexpected, certainty. Certainty that I was strong enough to stand alone when necessary. Certainty that I could trust my instincts. Certainty that the empire my grandmother had built was in good hands. I raised my wine glass to the sunset, to the future, to the woman I'd become through fire. Thanks for the lessons, grandmother, I whispered. Both the ones you taught me and the ones they taught me. The sun dipped below the horizon, and I walked back inside, ready for whatever came next. Epilogue. 3 months later. The courtroom was packed for the sentencing hearing. I sat in the front row, flanked by Robert and our legal team, watching as Marcus and Vanessa were led in wearing orange jumpsuits. They looked different now, smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of their crimes and the reality of their consequences. Vanessa's designer wardrobe was gone, replaced by prison uniforms. Marcus's charm had evaporated, leaving only a bitter, angry man who refused to make eye contact with anyone. The judge reviewed the case with thorough precision. Wire fraud, identity theft, embezzlement, corporate espionage. The charges rolled out like a litany of bad decisions and conscious cruelty. Mr. Dalton, the judge said, his voice heavy with disapproval, You have a documented history of targeting vulnerable women, exploiting their trust, and stealing from them systematically. This court finds your behavior not only criminal, but predatory. I hereby sentence you to 14 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, including Ms. Chen and the 3 other women who have come forward. Marcus's shoulders slumped. 14 years. He'd be 50 when he got out, his prime years gone, his reputation destroyed. The judge turned to Vanessa. Ms. Torres, while you do not have Mr. Dalton's extensive criminal history, your actions were calculated and deliberate. You abused a position of trust to steal from your employer and attempted to frame Ms. Chen for your crimes. This court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release, and orders full restitution. Vanessa started crying again, the same desperate sobs I'd heard that night at dinner. But this time there was no one to rescue her, no way to charm or manipulate her way out. Before they were led away, Vanessa turned to me. Our eyes met across the courtroom. "I'm sorry," she mouthed. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. As they were escorted out, Marcus finally looked at me. The hatred in his eyes was pure, undiluted. He'd expected to break me, to leave me devastated and broken while he lived off my money. Instead, I'd broken him. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around, shouting questions. Robert and I made a brief statement. Justice had been served. We were grateful for law enforcement's dedication. We hoped this would deter others from similar crimes. Back at the office, I took the elevator to my penthouse sanctuary and stood at the windows, looking out at the city I'd learned to navigate, to understand, to command. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hi, Diana. This is Sarah Chen from Chicago. I heard about the sentencing. Thank you for having the courage to fight. You gave me closure I thought I'd never have. If you're ever in Chicago, coffee's on me." Sarah, I smiled, saving her number. Maybe I would take her up on that offer. Maybe I'd reach out to the other women Marcus had victimized, form a network of survivors who'd turn their pain into power. Another text, this one from David Henderson. "Justice served. Well done, Ms. Chen. Your grandmother would be very proud." I looked at the photo of Margaret on my desk, her sharp eyes seeming to hold secrets and wisdom in equal measure. "I hope so, grandmother," I said softly. "I hope I made you proud." The sun was setting again, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Somewhere in the building below me, employees were wrapping up their work, heading home to families and friends and lives uncomplicated by betrayal. I'd survived my test by fire. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to value loyalty, to recognize predators in disguise. And I'd learned that revenge, when executed with patience and precision, wasn't just satisfying, it was justice. I opened my laptop and began drafting a memo to the board. There were new initiatives to pursue, markets to explore, a company to grow. The past was behind me now, locked away in prison cells and court records. The future stretched ahead, full of possibility. And this time, I'd face it not as the naive woman who'd believed in easy love and simple trust, but as the CEO who'd fought for her empire and won. My phone rang one last time. Robert's name appeared. "Diana? The board approved your proposal for the new ethics division. They want you to lead it personally." "An entire division dedicated to preventing corporate fraud?" I smiled. "Tell them I accept." "I will. And Diana?" His voice softened. "Take tonight off. Go home. Rest. You've earned it." "I will," I promised. "Right after I finish reviewing these quarterly reports." He laughed. "Some things never change. Good night, boss." "Good night, Robert." I hung up and returned to my work, the city lights twinkling below like stars. The office quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the distant sounds of traffic. Marcus had tried to make me watch him propose to her. She'd watched him beg me not to press charges. But in the end, they'd both watched as I proved that betrayal has consequences, that justice prevails, and that some women refuse to be victims. I was Diana Chen, CEO of Meridian Financial Group, and this was my empire. No one would take it from me again. The end. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.